And we are live on Facebook. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another New Jersey Constitutional Republicans virtual conversation. It's my privilege and pleasure once again to have my good friend Chuck Swanson from New Jersey Options for Women on today. Thank you for joining me, Chuck.
Glad to be here, and happy Constitution Day.
Happy Constitution Day indeed. So it's obviously one of a high holiday for constitutional Republicans as we look to restore the structure of the Constitution, but it was today. And I had earlier put up a post, Chuck, about describing it's also the 158th anniversary of the Battle of Antietam. And which was the September 17th, we lost over 23,000 casualties on that one day, which is the most in one day. And the Union was fighting to preserve the very Constitution that 65 years earlier had been ratified. And they were Republicans who made that ultimate sacrifice and who fought that war against the Confederacy. So it's a very, very special day indeed. And of course, we have a lot to talk about, and we'll talk about that on future programs. But it's great to have you here today. Thanks. And give us an update on your fight. Give us a little bit of background for those who may not have seen the previous videos about yourself and your organization, and tell us about the news that you have to share with us, please.
Great, Jay. I really appreciate that. So I'm the Chief Executive Officer of an organization called Options for Women. We're now in our 36th year of ministry. Our primary office is in Cherry Hill, but we have, well, we'll get there. So what Options for Women does is we are a pregnancy resource center. So imagine you're 22 years old, you're a senior in college, and you find out you're pregnant and you don't have insurance, or you're an immigrant working, picking blueberries or something down here in South Jersey, and you don't have insurance, but you're pregnant. Imagine the challenges and the difficult choices you have to make. We like to help women who are in that situation, families that are in that situation, to have what they need in order to be able to make the choice for life. We think that God is against abortion, as we are, and we feel very strongly that if we can help a woman get through the first feelings of crisis in her life about her pregnancy, that we can help them to continue to make good choices and find good health care and have good outcomes for their babies. So we've been doing that since 1985. The great news is that we have expanded. In February of this year, we opened an office in Trenton, New Jersey. Trenton is a bastion of, well, can I say it out loud? It's a bastion of evil as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the morals and the stand that we think we should take as biblical followers of Christ. And we wanted to make a statement there, but also to be available to the people of the Trenton and Mercer County area. So we opened an office at 945 West State Street, right just a couple of houses away from Trenton West High School. The same day, we had been working with an organization called the Hope Pregnancy Centers, and they have centers like ours in Ocean City and North Cape May, but they'd been struggling for a while. So also on February the 1st, we agreed to acquire those centers. And so we've now gone from one center, Cherry Hill, to now engaged in Trenton, Ocean City, and North Cape May, where we're meeting the needs of women and families all across South Jersey, and helping them to find the help and hope that they need. It's more than just social services. It's really hope that they're looking for, we feel. And the really good news is that we just took delivery of a brand new, custom-built, from the ground up, mobile medical unit. So anything that we can do here in the office, we can take on the road. It's in my back parking lot right now. We're going to be showing it off to some folks this afternoon. And we're just hoping to get it on the road probably by mid-October. Got some things we have to do in order to get it up and running. But God's really blessed us with that, and we're just excited about the way we'll be able to minister to many, many more folks around South Jersey as we get this up and running.
Outstanding, Chuck. And it's important for the people to know that you're not being subsidized by the government.
No.
You're a nonprofit organization, and you rely on the kindness and generosity of those who believe in the unalienable, God-given right of life, as we read in the Declaration of Independence. And as constitutional Republicans, we believe that that is the first and most important right. We can't have anything else unless we have life. And you're engaged in a remarkably important work with reaching out to these young ladies and ladies who have become pregnant, and teaching them the sanctity of the life of the living life of what they are responsible for as the mother of the life in their womb.
Yeah, agreed, JR. We're all about, what it talks about in Genesis 1, how we are created in the image of God, and we are his likeness. It's an interesting story. I get a chance to go out and preach a bit in some of the churches around South Jersey that want to support us. And by the way, as you mentioned, we have never charged a penny to any of our clients in 36 years. But I go out and get a chance to go out and preach. And one of the things I share is that, as when God was creating the world in days 1 through 5, he would get to the end of one thing and he'd say, and it was good. But he got to the end of the 6th day when he created man. What do you call a man? Very good. So, in God's opinion, the whole world was created around having, men and women populate the earth and dominate it and be a part of his plan. And so we truly believe in the biblical context of this, that God loves life. He created it, men and women specifically for this earth, and he is our creator. We owe all to him, and we just want to be helpful to those who are struggling with a very difficult choice. So, and we get about 3,000 calls a year, by the way. That's really significant from people that are in need. So,
and to think of all the lives that you're saving by speaking to these young ladies and giving them truth. It's absolutely, so much merit you're deserved of so much merit in what you're doing and what those who are helping you out and are doing. And this is why it's so important for the people who follow the constitutional Republicans and who watch our program to do what they can, if at all, to give you some support in what you're doing, because this is real work that's being done in saving lives, and also the psychological health of the mothers and the spiritual health of the mothers. It's so important. Chuck, we are trying to reestablish the idea that really the first statement of authority, the basis by which our founders founded our nation, which was based upon the laws of nature and nature's God, entitling the founders to create this nation and create this constitutional Republican government. And abortion is a contrary to the laws of nature and nature's God. You're referring to Adam and Eve, and what was the first commandment that he gave them? To be fruitful and multiply. And incidentally, that occurred after we read the statement in Genesis 1:28 about, or 1:26 rather, I believe it is. Let me just look at that very quickly. Yes.
Yeah.
And God blessed them, and that's in verse 28, 1:28. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. And incidentally, really, just to go back, that word good in describing the universe and very good describing the man is probably the most it's the word good, but it really could, you could take that word good and amplify it by an infinitive number and multiply it to come to the real understanding of good. Are you kidding? Good. The world was at that time, Chuck, perfect.
It was
before sin entered the world. So we're talking about a perfect universe. We're talking about a perfect man and a perfect woman. We can't even comprehend that. So the word good is very, very, it's not the, it doesn't really describe the real nature of the creation at that point. But the point is that God said to be fruitful, multiply. Abortion is a contradiction to that. Therefore, it is against the laws of nature, and nature's God.
Agreed. And we've got such a fight on our hands, with the way that we're struggling with both medical and chemical surgical abortion these days. I keep thinking back. I wish we had the same fire in our belly about freedom and the importance of it, and all that in this world today that the founders had. What an amazing group of men and women, who were really behind, all of the things supporting the founding of this country. And they literally risked their very lives to be able to, create this country. And I think if you follow the stories of all of those who signed the Declaration of Independence, most of them lost their fortunes or lost their very lives in support of the work that we now have in this country, the support that we have in America. It's to allow this kind of treatment of human beings to go on at the rate that it is, it's just unconscionable. And I really appreciate what you're doing, JR.
Well, I certainly appreciate what you're doing. And we both appreciate what happened in Texas a couple of weeks ago with the law, the heartbeat bill, protecting a child from the moment that the heartbeat is discerned or identified.
Yep.
And this is common sense legislation that is regarding the unalienable right to life. Of course, we know and believe that life begins at conception, the very moment of conception. We were all there. Every human being was conceived and was given their life at conception. You can't separate humanity from conception or say that life occurs later on down the road or later on in time. It begins at conception. And this is of course, the science now proves this, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. But we have to be very happy about what happened in Texas, Chuck.
Agreed. Yeah, the Texas heartbeat law says that if a heartbeat can be detected, then an abortion is not available to women. Now, our scientific knowledge is that a heartbeat can be detected anywhere from about the end of the 5th week through the 6th week of gestation. So this is really about the time that a woman's finding out that she's pregnant, and the baby already has a heartbeat. It's exciting, on the one hand, challenging, for those who are, trying to make some difficult choices, but really feel like we're saving over 100 babies a day in Texas because of this law. Map that out over the course of a year, and it's thousands and thousands of women that are not aborting their children in Texas because of this bill. And a federal judge affirmed that this was the correct understanding of the law last night.
Very good. Getting back up is very important. I wanted to share with you, Chuck. I wanted to share with you the beginning or the introduction to a video that we had produced in our abortion versus natural rights series. And it was part 3, what we called Roe v. Wade, raw judicial power involved with the Roe v. Wade decision. I want you to hear, in the audience, to hear what the writer of that decision, Justice Harry Blackmun, what he said in an interview with Bill Moyer a few years after. I believe this was taken, and this interview was taken in the late 1980s. But listen to what he says, carefully to what he says here. And it's clearly extraordinary.
It has stood for 14 years now. I think it is a landmark decision along the road that we must take to the emancipation of women. And I make no apology for that whatsoever. The decision.
And there I begin my presentation. But what is truly remarkable, Chuck, is that Justice Blackmun equated the decision in Roe v. Wade with the emancipation of women. Now, I hope the people process that and think about that a little bit. So what he's doing, Chuck, he's equating pregnancy with slavery.
Yeah. And, we know this is such a tough topic. When I go out to, share, our message of hope in churches and in other organizations, I make sure that people that are there understand that they're safe with me, or they're safe with their pastor, or safe with someone that they can trust. They're not going to be judged if they want to talk about these things. So we've had 63 million abortions since Roe versus Wade. Imagine how many women who have had those abortions are still alive today. Let's call the number 30 million women who have had abortions since then. They're not free. They have guilt and sadness and depression and anxiety that ruins relationships, pulls them out of good things that had they not had their abortion, they would find their life better. They would have a child to enjoy life with. I met a woman down in South Jersey a few months ago. For 40 years, she has regretted taking her daughter to an abortion center. She said to me, I would have a grandchild who's 40 years, and then I'd probably have great grandchildren, and who knows what beyond that if I hadn't made that 3-mile drive to the abortion center when she was 14. I just can't imagine. We minister to women who are what we call post-abortive, and I think that's an even greater crisis than what we are seeing with the amount of abortions in our country. I think it has such an effect on our world, on our culture, on our families, that we really need to, as churches, as believers, followers of Christ, we really need to find those who are struggling from the effects of abortion over time and minister to them. We have women come into our office and meet with our client service team who have had an abortion, some of them many, many years ago. And the first thing that happens is that the tears flow and they feel released. They feel like they've been set free. They have this huge weight on their shoulders that from the doubt and the guilt and the sadness and the anxiety of having made that choice so many years ago. Multiply that times 30 million people across our country. How many around the world? Because there's so many more abortions outside of the US than here. And just imagine what the world would be like without abortion. How much greater would our lives be? How much less guilt and sadness and just real tragedy be in this world?
Of course, you can speak perfectly to this, Chuck, because you have spoken to these young ladies and your staff is engaging with these young ladies, and you see and literally feel this. And of course, we know that God is written on the hearts of all human beings, some more to a lesser degree than others, or a greater degree than others. And that is that murder is intuitively wrong, and that abortion clearly is in opposition to the laws of nature. Nature's God. And part of the laws of nature is the writing on the hearts of the conscience, if you will. It's conscience that God gives human beings. And we know inherently that it is wrong to extinguish or destroy life. Now, I do want to show you another video, if you would allow me to do that.
Yeah.
And this was a video that we created in relation to Phil Murphy's, what he calls, and what the Democrats proudly call, the Reproductive Freedom Act, which by God's mercy has been stalled. But the determination is there. And I wanted you to watch this, about 2 minutes. So please indulge me, if you will. And then I give a statement in the beginning of the video, and then we'll discuss further what we're hearing in this video. But just listen to Phil Murphy and what he's saying here.
guarantee of reproductive rights and to affirm to the public that we fully believe in everyone's right to make decisions regarding their body and health. This will be the Reproductive Freedom Act. That we would have gotten to this. This has been an intention, I think, by everybody on the screen for a long, long time. But for sure, the intensity of our passion has only gotten even more acute, as it should. Justice Ginsburg's life work gives us the courage to do more than sit idly by as New Jerseyans wonder aloud whether the Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade. As the anti-choice and, quite frankly, anti-woman movement surges, as you said, Caitlin, in other states, here in New Jersey, we are moved to act. We are seizing the moment to codify everyone's full reproductive rights into law. This means that rather than relying on case law, New Jersey's law on the books will state that this is plain and clear, yielding. For anyone in New Jersey who over the past few weeks or months has feared that their rights would be diminished or taken away, let me assure you, your body belongs to you. For the first time in decades, it seems possible that the Supreme Court could overturn Roe v. Wade. We know who bears the true burden of these draconian and inhumane laws: the most vulnerable, those living in poverty, people of color, those with limited resources and means, those whom we should be lifting up and giving a seat at the table. As we already know, when women are healthier and have more economic freedom, we all do better. We are committed to the women of our state. We cannot be complacent. So instead, we will be proactive in the protection of reproductive rights. Here in New Jersey, we will not diminish or in any way try to take away your inalienable rights.
Our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution does not identify any unalienable right to kill another human being.
So there we have it, Chuck. We have Phil Murphy saying that abortion is an unalienable, that means unchanging right, the same word used in the Constitution that says of the unalienable God-given right of life. A total contradiction of what the Declaration says. And he took a lot of heat for his remark about the Second Amendment and the Bill of Rights being above his pay grade. But I think he needs to be even more held accountable to thinking that it's an unalienable right for a woman to kill the child within her womb. Again, this is contrary to the laws of nature and nature's God.
Every time I hear that, I've heard that before, and I refer to, some of the things that Planned Parenthood has written about this. I have it on my phone just to the side. It just makes my heart pound, and I just grieve for these people who really don't understand what God has planned and how he wants this world ordered, and that murdering a child that is unborn is not a choice. It's a baby. So frustrating to hear people who have such power make such bad decisions regarding the people of the state of New Jersey. It just drives me to distraction quite a bit.
And of course, there's a lot there that he said, Chuck, that we could dissect, that I could take apart point by point. Another one is, and this is used by many of the proponents of abortion, is, well, it's the woman's body. Well, the child also has a body.
Yes.
And that seems to be put to the side. It's not recognized. The humanity of the child, which now where they're changing their argument a bit. And we'll talk about this in a moment. But the fact is that the child does have a body as well. And then he's also talking about the people of color and people who are of poor, live in poor economic situations. They're the ones who are going to suffer if they're not able to murder the child in their body. Again, another contradiction. The black community has been devastated by abortions. in this country. They still remain around 13 to 15% of the population, and they would have a lot more say in government. They would have a lot more say in elections. They would have a lot more say in their own destinies, as opposed to relying on the failed policies of the Democratic Party. If these children were alive and were born as opposed to aborted, the Black community should be up in fury about the number of abortions that have been perpetuated upon them.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about, the preceding thoughts of why they justify abortion, but we could just pick this apart, what he's talking about. And also it's unconstitutional, the idea of what he wants to do in codifying Roe v. Wade in the New Jersey Constitution. Of course, that's a federal law that was unjustly applied to the states.
Yep.
But again, go ahead and give me your thoughts on that, on all the different points we can make.
The prime supporter, and by the way, that call was the recording of a meeting that he had with Planned Parenthood. He is specifically aligning himself with an organization whose sole mandate is to abort babies. Now, they say that they do other things, but it is such a small percentage of the work that they do. 90% of the work that they do is just about abortion, and they target people of color. If you notice where their offices are, they're in the inner city. They're in places where the poorest of the poor live, and they deliberately go there in order to prey on them and to take their money and to kill their babies. Now, if you go back to Planned Parenthood's beginning with Margaret Sanger, she was what we call a eugenicist. She was a person who felt like there were some people were better and some people were not. And she looked at people of color as people who were not worthy of life. She also looked at people with Down syndrome as being lesser. People who were taking up space in nursing homes were not worthy of life. And she deliberately created this organization to get rid of people of color primarily. And we see that in New York City. I've just heard again that there were more abortions among Black women in New York City than there were births in the last 3 years. That's a holocaust of just really global proportions. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands more abortions than live births in a major city, and it's just astounding to hear him say these things. You look at Planned Parenthood, and they, as I said, they're really preying on the least of these in our society, and deliberately, and it's all about the money. They do about 900 and some thousand abortions just in Planned Parenthood centers a year, and it's just horrible. And they're using our tax money to subsidize the work that they do. $600 million a year.
And a couple of months ago, we had Dr. Kathleen Ruddy, who's one of the top surgeons in the country in removing breast cancer. And she is our resident physician, if you will. And she made this suggestion, which really needs to be talked about and needs to be contemplated by our society and our voters, is the fact that the real motivation behind this reproductive act, I mean, New Jersey is already one of the leading abortion states in the country and allows women to abort children right up to birth.
Yep.
What is the real motivation or the impetus behind the promotion of this bill? And she suggests it's because of how lucrative the fetal harvesting business is, and the money that can be made in relation or in lieu of the murder of a human being, a child, before their birth or even at birth. So this idea of harvesting, a horrible idea, could be the impetus behind the further push for this reproductive act, as Murphy calls it.
Yeah, we have one of the reasons that we are where we are. We deliberately picked our location at Cherry Hill about 18 years ago, was that we would be in the neighborhood of a very busy abortion center. It's called the Cherry Hill Women's Center. It is the busiest abortion center in the Delaware Valley. They do over 10,000 abortions, literally 3 or 4 blocks up the street every year. And it's criminal.
Tragic.
As you said, they're harvesting parts of babies' skin, eyes, brains, for research or for surgical procedures, and they get paid enormous amounts of money by the companies that are looking for these. The companies have been recorded by a number of organizations, and they show that they actually just put in orders to various busy abortion centers, saying, I need this particular body part, or I need this particular bit of skin or a brain or whatever, so that they can do research. And the abortion centers make amazing amounts of money doing that. They pay their bills by doing the abortions, but they really make their money above and beyond that by doing this harvesting of cells or body parts or whatever. And it's just tragic to see how this goes on in what we thought was a civil society.
And Chuck, let's talk a little bit now about the history of how abortion became legal in the country at that time. Now, prior to Roe v. Wade, the states would make the decisions on abortion, and no abortion was permitted. And the motive was to protect the woman and the child. Of course, William Blackstone, the famous legal jurist and the great legal mind that the founders looked to and was such a great influence, said that throughout English common law, the life of the child in the womb was considered as being already born. And that began in their mind with conception. Of course, they didn't have the scientific knowledge, but they knew when a woman was pregnant that the child was an individual human being and that child had natural rights of life. Number one, to be able to become alive and to be given birth. But really what occurred in this country started in the 60s. It was the second wave of the feminist movement that thought that women were able to have sex out of wedlock whenever they want, with whoever they wanted. And then coupling that with the rise of the sexual revolution and books like The Joy of Sex and Free Love, it was called, really should have been called Free Lust. But that was the whole impetus in the 60s, the combination of feminism, giving the right of the woman to choose for herself, to have sex indiscriminately outside of wedlock. And the crack in the foundation, Chuck, was really the idea that people, up until then, people realized that if you wanted to have sex, you got married. And the sex was to be the matrimonial relationship was the environment from which sex would take place. In the 60s, threw all that aside. Of course, this has a lot to do with the overall apostasy, especially in some of the churches. They were actually saying, yes, this is okay. It's all right. You can have sex out of wedlock. And so this was really provided the impetus for the mindset that would allow abortion to come along just being legally codified by Roe v. Wade 13 years later. And the pill was in 1960, the pill came out and they gave women this sense of freedom to be able to have sex outside of wedlock. And really that is where the problem started, with the destruction of the sexual relationship, the sacred matrimonial relationship with marriage and reproductive, the ability to reproduce, which the people had and still have.
Yeah, and we've seen nothing change since then. It just continues to get worse, and now we've sort of embedded this mindset into our culture in a way that, well, I mean, even in the TV commercials, you'll see two men who have a child, or you see all kinds of things that completely against God's law that show up in TV. They show up in Instagram and TikTok culture, especially indoctrinating our children these days. And I just, it is everywhere. You can't get away from the message that sex out of marriage is okay. Sex with anyone is okay. In any way you can determine what your relationships ought to be, and completely contrary to God's will. It's just amazing to see how this has proliferated.
And you see in the end of the 60s, Chuck, with the free love movement and the sexual revolution, that sex then became part of the university and college life.
Oh, yeah.
So much so that when I went in the early 80s, it was, well, you were expected to have sex when you went to college. And the more, the better. It was almost like one conquest after another. It was almost like, people were taking a tablature. They were taking how many people they slept with. And this was contrary to thousands of years of laws of nature, nature's God, where one man takes one woman and they create a family. And it was within that matrimonial relationship that sex takes place. And of course, Chuck, we cannot forget the dramatic and tremendous impact pornography and the pornography industry has had on our nation and continues today, and the lives that has ruined. And of course, people have been motivated by pornography to engage in sexual relations. And then if there's a pregnancy as a result, well, immediately there's no consideration for the life of the child. The child is doomed to abortion. And pornography drives the lust that men and women, especially men who need to be much more responsible when having a woman or having a girlfriend, and respecting her and realizing that sexual relations have consequences. We're going to talk about this idea of choice in a minute. I want to bring up another share screen with you. But really, it's truly remarkable, the promiscuity, just completely an explosion as a result of the sexual revolution. And people today, Chuck, who've been born after the 1970s, they think, well, this has always been that way. It's always been normal, and it has not.
No, it's not.
Marriage was revered. Relationships occurred within marriage and exclusively within marriage, and marriages stayed together. And of course, we can talk about that on another program, the proliferation of divorce, the injustice of no-fault divorce, on and on and on, that we can talk about. But it's truly remarkable the impact that the 60s had with the feminist movement, with the free love movement, with the explosion of pornography. And all of this has led and created the environment from which abortion would be accepted.
Yeah, for sure. You talk about college. I went to college in the 70s. I'm a little older than you. And
well, you don't look it.
My roommate was a football player at the college that we went to, and he said that if I ever came to the room and there was a tie on the doorknob, that I should go away. Well, the entire freshman year of college, there was a tie on that door 2 or 3 nights a week, and I had to sleep in my RA's room on the floor. It was just, it's all over.
Unbelievable.
And that was in the 70s. It's gotten so much worse now.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable how it's just commonplace, the accepted idea that you can have sex out of wedlock. And of course, this creates the opportunity for a pregnancy. It often does. And then because it's not consummated, the consummation of those relations is within the matrimonial relationship, and the people engaged in this aren't understanding how important it is that relationship, sexual relationship, only exists within the matrimonial relationship. Yeah. It's become a laugh. It's become a joke. Whereas a couple of 100 years ago, really up until the 50s, that if you engage in sex outside of wedlock, you were ostracized in many ways. You were, you were looked upon as a person who wasn't following the law of nature, if you will, and doing what was God's will. But I wanted to show you another share with you another share screen, and this comes from a website talking about the second wave feminism and abortion. Of course, the first wave of feminism was a lot to do with late women's suffrage, and in many ways, that was a very just and good wave of feminism. However, one of the considerations that occurred with the second wave was also the fact, Chuck, that women should be entitled to have careers and they should be making money. And in many instances, because of inflation and the way our monetary system has been managed, creating this inflation, that it's been necessary for women to go to work. Well, if they're at work, they're not able to lead the home, which is what they traditionally had done. And even that was demonized by the feminists. He said, "Oh, a woman who's staying at home, she's not, she's just kowtowing to chauvinism, and she's not reaching her full potential." But God had always saw, and it was done for thousands of years, that the woman was taking care of the home and raising the children, having a lot to do with raising the children, providing them the maternal aspects of that duty, is what the man does with the patriarchal relationship. But that was another important objective of the second wave of feminism, was to get women out of the home and into the working environment. So again, this led to the destruction of the nuclear family, which has brought us such great chaos in our society today. But I wanted you to look, Chuck, at this diagram, which has a woman. It's representative of a woman. It says "my mind" at the top of where their mind is, and then in the "my body" is the next, and then down below it says "my choice." Now, here's my question for those who talk about it's a woman's body, it's her choice. We as men shouldn't have anything to do with infringing upon the choice of a woman, and we have no right to say anything, even though it does take a man to engage in sexual relations to create pregnancy. But my question is this: when they talk about choice, because choice really is whether the child is, in their minds, deemed worthy enough to be born or not. How about the choice of not engaging in sexual relations? And when doing so within marriage, and doing so within being cognizant of the fact that that relationship may precede a birth, may precede conception of a child. How about those choices? Why isn't that a choice? Why is it always, well, it's my choice, it's my body. If I want to have an abortion, I'm going to have an abortion. Well, wait a minute. Let's not put the cart before the horse. In other words, let's talk about the choice you're making in having sexual relations. But here's the thing, Chuck, they think they're entitled to that. People think, well, I'm entitled to have sex anytime I want with whoever I want. And it doesn't have to be, and this has been taught to us by those who don't believe in the laws of nature and nature's God, who don't believe in the sanctity of human life, who don't believe in the veracity of the Bible.
Yeah. If you look at scripture, there were times when Jesus specifically called out certain people and their sins. And the ones that he criticized the most were the ones who had moral sin. These were the one: men sleeping with men, women sleeping with women, people having relations outside of marriage, and so on. Those were the ones that he criticized the most strongly. And I just find that the whole culture is sort of turned on its head by this, by this kind of behavior. When we talk about my body, my choice, by the way, it really isn't your body once that baby has been created. It has separate DNA. It has separate systems and so on. After that baby is born, it has its own DNA. It's separate from the mother. It's completely different from a DNA standpoint. I guess they have a lot in common, but there are a lot of things that are different as well because the father contributes. So from the moment of conception, that baby is not your body. It is a second living thing within you. And it is the choice that you have to make is before you get into a relationship, before you choose to have sex with someone. And
That's
that is, in the mind of God, that is one of the most grievous bad choices that you can make, is to have, is to fall into moral sin.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In an article entitled Radical Feminism and Abortion, Chuck, written by Janine Gallagher, March 3rd, 2018, she says that, interestingly, quote, much of the current literature from the pro-choice movement has moved away from arguing over when life begins. Of course, the science has a tremendous impact on that realization. And in
Yeah.
fact, this statement can be found, and of course, so that changes the degree of argument in relation to when life begins. We're finding out more and more begins at conception.
Yeah.
So she goes on to say that instead of trying to convince us that the fetus, which I don't particularly care for that terminology, of an unborn child, but the pro-choice advocates focus on convincing us, rather than ensuring the right of a woman to abort an unwanted child is the humanitarian thing to do. And unfortunately, women are being persuaded. And it is ironic that feminists, a group who claims to stand for the absolute rights of females, essentially disenfranchise a large group of those females through their stance on abortion rights. At least half of the victims, and possibly more because of the use of selective abortions permitted in other countries, are females. Nothing could be more juxtaposed than one female asserting her rights as a feminist while denying an unborn female the essential and basic unalienable right to life.
Oh yeah.
And there we.
Yeah, I would challenge people to go out and read Justice Thomas's thoughts on Roe versus Wade. He's been a justice for 30 some years, more than me. And he writes on this and speaks on it frequently. And he comes at it, from the standpoint of a very strong Catholic upbringing and a strong Catholic life now, as a believer, a follower of Christ. And he knows that this was really, really poorly decided. And I think one of the key things that people may not be really aware of right now is that Roe versus Wade is really hinged on what we call viability. This whole argument that the baby really can't be alive until it's born. Well, in 1973, if a baby was born at 30 weeks, it's likely that it would not have survived. But we've changed that since 1973. The data, the age of viability can now come down to 21 or 22 weeks. That's only a little over half of the gestation of the baby. So we're seeing science push back the edge of the envelope in terms of when a baby, can be considered alive and how long they can live outside of the womb. And this whole idea of them not recognizing that life begins at conception is just nonsense. For the ones that call themselves the party of science, we've known for a long time that life begins at conception. You can see, some of these documentaries that show a close-up of a fertilized egg and sperm together in the earliest days. Literally within hours of them coming together, that this is a life, that the cells are propagating and all kinds of things are happening. So the arguments for abortion are really, they're really on the edge of a cliff right now, between the viability arguments and when life begins and some of these states that are putting in place laws like Texas. Missouri has come very close to doing this exact same thing. So I think the arguments against abortion are becoming stronger and more science-based, and we're having the opinion of the populace is really coming around. I think the last I heard, about 65% of Americans believe that abortion is really not a choice. So we've
Of
got
course-
quite a battle ahead.
And the Guggenheimer Institute, Chuck, which is a pro-choice organization, their statistics show that 93% of abortions given are due to inconvenience to the mother. So this that would correlate with the remarks made here about abortions on humanitarian principles.
Yeah.
So essentially what it becomes is that the worth of a human life is only determined by the mother, whether the mother wants the child, whether the mother can afford the child, and so forth. And this is why it's so important to think about the choice aspect prior to engaging in sexual relationship.
Yes.
Do you love the husband you're going to have a relationship? Are you married? Do you have a husband? Is this person going to take care of you and the child? Are you going to be able to raise the child in a loving home with the benefit of the influences of a mother and father? All of these choices and considerations need to be taken. They're not taken only because the person says, well, I'm entitled to have sex. And that's not true. You're not. No one is given the right to have a sex unless it's done within the matrimonial relationship as God has written the laws of nature, and nature's God. So the choice really becomes is the mother determines the viability, not the viability in the sense that you're talking about outside of the womb, but the inviolability or the sacrosanctness, the sanctity of life is determined on whether the mother wants the child or not. If the child isn't wanted, well, that the child can be destroyed. If the child's wanted, well, okay, then they have the child. But that's not the way it is. All human life is equal. All self-evident truth, all men are created equal. So we get back to the Declaration again. Self-evident truth that all men are created equal. That creates every single man and woman or child, boy and girl within their mother's womb. They're all equal in their unalienable right to life, and there is no conditions that can be placed upon it. Now, here's what we've been saying. The Supreme Court needs to recognize the inviolability of the human being from the moment of conception.
Yep.
Now, here is where we give those who may not believe that the opportunity to do something about it, with the states being given back their right to decide democratically what conditions may exist that would permit or the possibility of an abortion based upon the input of the parents, and the doctors. Let the states decide democratically what that should be. But the first thing is the Constitution should recognize the inviolability of the life of the child from conception. Now, in case of rape, incest, all these other very unfortunate and horrible acts, which are acts that are committed against women, depriving them of their natural right of life, liberty, and happiness. And of course, there should be justice that's severely and quickly implemented on those who violate a woman's right of her bodily autonomy.
Yep.
And that needs to be restored. But also, Chuck, the fact is that these type of abortions are, and as you can attest to, make up a fraction of the abortions given. We've already seen 93% of abortions are given because of inconvenience.
Yeah.
Now,
I'd
here's
say
my
that-
question.
I'd say that number
I think-
is actually higher. Yeah.
But
I think that number is actually
Yeah.
higher.
my, okay. But my, what we're suggesting is that the court recognize the inviolability, give it back to the states to decide what conditions may exist, where there may be an exemption, if you will. And I'm very uncomfortable with that, because here's my argument, Chuck. What makes the child conceived in a horrible manner? But what makes the child conceived in rape or incest any less of a human being than the child conceived in love and within marriage?
Still
That's my
created,
question.
yeah, still created in the image of God. The circumstances being terribly difficult, tragic sometimes. But who says that one child is better or different from another and not worthy of life? It's incredible. It's incredible. Can I just
Now, as
throw
I
in-
say that, But just let me say this real quickly, Chuck. Now, as I say this, I believe that there should be severe penalties for those who are convicted of rape, for those who are engaged in incest, for those who take advantage of a woman. They need to be punished to the furthest extent of the law, and a minimum amount of penalty would be castration or sterilization or something that makes sure that the person who's involved with rape is never, ever allowed or able to rape another person again. And that would not fall under the Eighth Amendment of cruel and unusual punishment. A man who takes advantage of a woman and rapes her should be given the ultimate and supreme extent of the penalty involved with such a criminal act. So I want to preface that. And today we don't see that going on. We see 2 or 3 year sentences. There's no justice. Give women who've been raped justice. And that requires that punishment must be given to the perpetuator of the violation of their rights.
Oh, yeah. And we see that in scripture. The punishment needs to fit the crime. An eye for an eye, a tooth for tooth. That's a biblical concept. And, we absolutely have to go there. We absolutely have to go there. And now, a lot of that is actually coded into federal law in a lot of states. In a lot of places. So we do see that, but we really need to up our game in terms of protecting women and providing for justice for them in these extreme situations. So, yeah.
Right. And what was your other thought that I interrupted?
That's okay. There's just one other thing that I think folks should be aware of, as we know elections have consequences. The New Jersey State Board of Medical Examiners is a very important organization. They oversee all the physicians who are licensed in New Jersey. They are currently contemplating a rule, which I'm sure will be put into effect on November 4th, the day after the election, that would allow non-physicians to provide abortions. That means a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, or even a nurse midwife could do an abortion. Now, a physician who goes into obstetrics and gynecology, before they can be officially board certified, can sometimes have to see as many as 500 cases. They have to be involved in 500 births or abortions, as the case may be, before they can be board certified. Their new rule would say that they could see 50 cases before they could be certified to do abortions in an outpatient facility, and outside of the hospital. They could do it in a doctor's office or a Planned Parenthood facility. So they're going to hurt women. There's just no doubt about it that this will injure and even kill women who are unsuspecting of what's going to happen in the abortion suite. So I think that's a critical thing that your listeners should know about.
That's right. And that is also one of the 5 proposals within the Reproductive Freedom Act too, I believe, Chuck.
Yeah.
That you don't necessarily need to be a certified physician to be able to give an abortion.
It's frightening.
But we look at the higher principles, which is the principle of life and the sanctity of life and the unalienable God-given right of life. And it's very important. And Chuck, I want to thank you for joining me today. How can people reach out and help you with the valuable and immensely important work that you're doing with Options for Women? Please tell us how we can help.
Well, we need prayer. When clients come to us, they're in a crisis, and we want to help them get past the crisis so that they can make good decisions. So prayer is critically important. We need some volunteers. We always need folks who are willing to step up. Perhaps even women who have, Christian women who have experienced abortion or been part of an abortion experience would be especially helpful to us in the work that we do. And then, of course, we don't charge our clients for the work that we do for them. So we could use donors to step up, and they can go to optionsnj.org to do that. So thank you for letting me share that.
Great, Chuck. It's always great to have you with us, and we'll have you again on soon. And we'll have another discussion. We talked about next time we may talk a little bit about marriage and the definition of it and what it means. And it's important for Republicans, constitutional Republicans already, but it's important for all Republicans to take the higher moral ground,
Amen.
to reestablish the principles and virtues that created our nation, and that our founders understood that our type of constitutional government, of course, today is Constitution Day, that only a moral and virtuous people would be able to maintain a democratic constitutional republic. And we see the splinters and the cracks within the foundation of our type of government all over today. And a lot of it has to do with the position that many have taken on either side of the abortion battle. But thank you, Chuck, for joining me. And go ahead. Would you like to sign
Pleasure. Just
off?
wanted to say thank you. Really appreciate your time, and God bless you and the viewers.
Thank you, Chuck. Always a pleasure to be with you. And let me finish up with what Abraham Lincoln said. He said that all this is not the result of an accident. That's the creation of our type of government, of our nation. He said that it has a philosophical cause. And without the Constitution and the Union, we would not obtain the result. But even these are not the primary cause of our great prosperity as Americans. There is something back of these entwining itself more closely with the human heart. And that something is the principle of liberty to all, the principle that clears the path for all and gives hope to all, and by consequence, enterprise and industry to all. Abraham Lincoln. And Chuck, we believe that those very words can provide the impetus by which the Republican Party can once again be restored in garnering and creating a new rebirth of freedom for the American people.
Agreed.
Thank you, Chuck. Please like and share our video, everyone, and we will see you tomorrow when we have another special guest coming on. Check out our post on our Facebook group page, and we will see you again. Thank you. Take care.